Next item on the agenda is approval of agenda. I need a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Motion by Mrs. Vogel,
Second.
second by Ms. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0. So it is wonderful to see so many people here tonight, because usually we're in a room all by ourselves. I just want to give you the lay of the land for how the meeting will run tonight and with the agenda. So this is our regular school committee meeting. So we do need to get through the agenda, as you can see here. Consent agenda, personnel announcements, superintendent's report, standing committee reports, public hearing, and then comments from the public. And so that's your moment, I'm guessing. So when we get to comments from the public, and I'll say this at the time as well, but you'll come up, you'll state your name and address. We're asking you to also write that down for us. So that's what we were getting our pen and paper for. And there's a 3-minute time limit on the comments. And the comments are one way. We're not by per Open Meetings Act, we're not allowed to have a interactive discussion during the public comments. So it's your chance to give us your input, and many of you have emailed us, and that's great, and you could continue to, do that, but it will be a 3-minute limit. So I apologize now if we have to cut you off, but that is per the policy. And then after public comments, under new business, we have item A, for discussion only about the proposed redistricting. So that will be the chance for Dr. Thornton to present his thinking around all of this, and for the school committee to discuss it. Because this is a public meeting, or a public kind of viewing of the school committee in action, it's also not interactive with you, the audience. It's interactive with us as a committee. So I just want to let you know that now, and so you understand how that works. But I'm hopeful too, of course, that you all will be here for that part of it. And if you have questions about things that come up in that, you can, after the meeting, you can contact Dr. Thornton, you could contact members of the school committee if there's more questions or information that you have after that section. So, and then we're going to continue with the rest of our agenda. So just wanted to make sure that everyone understood that, so that there's no surprises. We appreciate everyone being here. This is what local government's all about. And I thank you in advance for being, how shall I say, kind and civil when you come to the microphone would be awesome. So that's what I have to say about that. So we're going to move ahead. So the next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Approval of minutes, item A, of a special meeting 12/5/2023, the second special meeting on 12/5/2023, the regular meeting on 12/14/2023. Item B, the approval of minutes from the executive session 11/9/2023, executive session 12/5/2023, executive session 12/14/2023. Item C, the enrollment report 1/1/2024. Item D, the school transportation report 1/1/2024. Item E, the school bus inspection reports 1/1/2024. Item F, the residency truancy report 1/1/2024. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion approved.
Motion by Mrs. Vogel.
Second.
Who is Mrs.? Oh my God, you're right next to me. Sorry. Motion by Mrs. Feather, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the personnel announcements. Mrs. Drezek.
Good evening. Tonight we have 10 appointments. Effective 12/21/2023, we have Lourdes Aguiar, an MLL teacher at Community. We have Samantha Benjamin, a grade 5 teacher at Ashton. They're both one-year only positions. Effective 1/2/2024, we have Kristen Marquis, social worker at McCourt and North Cumberland Middle School, 1 year only. Samantha Soares, special education teacher Strive at North Cumberland Middle School, 1 year only. And Denise Thomas, MLL teacher at McCourt, 1 year only. Effective 1/8/2024, Alita Gomes, paraprofessional in the MLO program at Cumberland High School. Effective 11/20/2023, Christine Holman was assigned to the assistant principal position at McCourt Middle School. Effective 1/16/2024, Nellie Normand will be the assistant principal at Community and BF Norton. Effective 3/2/2024, Melanie Santos will be the new confidential assistant to the superintendent and school committee. And effective 3/4/2024, Asia Macron will be the new confidential assistant to the director of special education. We have 3 resignations. Effective 1/3/2024, Shannon McClure, grade 7-8 science teacher at McCourt. Resignation effective 1/9/2024, Brianna Delon, speech language pathologist, and she's currently on a leave of absence this school year. And effective 1/22/2024, Leah Bazzuto, special education teacher, North Cumberland Middle School. And I have one retirement to announce that personally affects me. My confidential assistance and benefit coordinator, Marion Barone, will be retiring effective 6/30/2024. And coaching appointments as provided to you earlier. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the school committee? Mrs. Rogalski?
Do we have an idea of how many MLL teachers we're still looking for the district?
I believe we have one position open at Cumberland High School and one at McCourt Middle School, but we have made a lot of progress in filling those positions.
Mr. Fiorello?
Maybe Dr. Thornton can answer this, or Ms. Drezick. Nellie Norman moving into the vice principal position, who's taking over her position at the preschool?
She actually left us last year and was out of district. She's back with us now.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm behind the times.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda, report out of executive session meeting on 1/11/2024. Report out of executive session votes. We did not take any votes at tonight's meeting. And a vote to seal the minutes of the executive session. I need a motion to seal. Motion by Mrs. Rogalski, second by Ms. Smith. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes 7-0. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
Madam Chair, I'll give all my time to the RICAST team this evening. Mr. D'Amato, you can take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Thornton. Good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, members of the committee. This evening, we are happy to present to you our latest state testing results. And we know that the agenda is quite large this evening, so we'll try to be as efficient as possible and to give you ample time to probe us and question us on various aspects.
Is this presentation in our drive?
I just sent it to you physically in your emails. I sent it. Okay, so you should have it in your mailboxes, as for you, Dr. Thornton. Okay. So this evening, our team, we have, per usual, we have Kathy with me to my left. We have Bethany and Melissa, and other members of our team are also here tonight. Shannon is here, along with Jillian and Jamie. They are here in the event that there are questions that may be hitting their arena and their area of expertise that can help us out. Okay? So we're going to jump right in, and as a reminder, like we do every year, we just give you the scale.
Hold on just a second,
Yes.
Mr. D'Amato. We don't have that email. I don't know if it's possible for us to get it or if we're not connected, because we can't see.
As soon as I hand the mic over, I'll resend it. Or if, Mike, you have it, can you send it to them?
Or, yeah, and if he just turns that so we can see it too.
Yep.
Can you see it?
All set? Okay.
Thanks, sorry.
No worries, no worries. So the scale upon which all students are measured ranges from 440 scale score points to a 560. And the benchmark number that we'll be mainly reporting out are students who are meeting expectations and above that, starting at 500. So that 500 marker is the cut score for proficiency that's reported out. So our next slide, give it to Kathy.
Next one. Okay, thanks. All right, so we're going to start with math, and then we'll go into ELA.
back in 2015, the first bar on the graph, we were using PARC as our state assessment. And you can see that we only had 37% of students that demonstrated proficiency in math. The percentage of proficient students steadily increased up to 55% in 2019. Just a note, our test changed in 2018 to RICAS. But then you can see 2021, there was a decrease because that was post-pandemic. Since then, that number has increased to 58%, which is actually higher than we were pre-pandemic at 55%. So back in 2017, when we wrote the strategic plan, the goal was for Cumberland to be one of the top performing districts as measured by standardized testing, and RICAS is our measure for elementary and middle school. So this year we achieved that goal, ranking number 5 with 58% of students meeting or exceeding standards. The next slide shows the rankings since 2015, and you can see we were, quite a bit lower in 2015 through 17. We increased. We had a drop during the pandemic. 2022, we were 4th, and Little Compton was 5th. This year, Little Compton was 4th, and we were 5th. There was a difference of 1 percentage point in proficiency. So we were 58%, and they were 57. There was a 1 percentage point difference.
Yeah, could you stay on this slide just for
Sure.
a second? The previous slide? Okay. So, and we know, and I don't know, Mr. Damana, if you're going to cover this in your overall narrative, but many of these, Little Compton for sure, they're not of similar demographics or size as Cumberland. If you look at the number of people tested in Jamestown, the number of people tested in Little Compton versus the number of people tested in Cumberland, it's a lot easier to move the needle when you have 130 kids versus 2,000 kids. And,
I think that's our next slide.
oh, okay, sorry about that. All right.
Okay. So like you said, Mrs. Friedman, our district tests over 2,000 students. Little Compton tests 130. Jamestown is 271. So to give you a different comparison, we just ranked the districts that have over 1,100 students. And even with that, Cumberland is one of the biggest districts, as you can see, in the top 10. So if you just look at districts that assess 1,100 students or more, Cumberland actually ranks 3rd. It would take Jamestown and Little Compton, those very small communities, out of the ranking. And again, when we look at rankings, we're only comparing ourselves to districts that test the same grade levels. So there are some districts that, don't have a middle school. They might have a regional school. So those aren't included. This is only districts that also test grades 3 to 8. And it doesn't include charter schools either, although we do later a comparison to BVP. I'll pass it to Bethany for the ELA.
Thank you, Kathy. Good evening. I'd like to say ditto because I'm a little nervous, but I'll do my best. So here's our ELA journey over time. As Kathy stated, we started in 2015 with PARC. You can see that we grew through 2019. We took a dip post-pandemic in 2021. We kind of stayed the same in 2022. We did make some nice gains in spring 23 at 55% proficient. Back in 2021, during our presentation, we did discuss our predictive rate for gaining back to where we were pre-pandemic. With last year's gains, we're kind of back on track. So we predicted that we would gain 3 percentage points each year and that we would be back at 61% proficiency in 2025. So with the gains that we made last school year, we're back on track. So we just need to gain 6 more points. Here's looking at our district rankings with another view. We scored 5th. We ranked 5th. As Kathy said, we're top 5, which was one of our goals. You'll see the district name, their percent proficiency, and then the number tested. Here's another way to look at our data. You'll see that we made some nice progress Last school, well, in 2022, we ranked 8th in ELA, and this year we gained 3 rankings, which is great.
Can you go back one slide? And then Mr. Fiorello has a question as well. Thank you.
Mrs. Silva, I'm looking at Little Compton, Barrington, East Greenwich, Jamestown. I'm assuming that they don't come close to the number of multi-language learners that we have. And also, over the last 3 years, our ML population has really grown, has it not?
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. And then when we factor in districts testing 1,100 or more students, you can see that we rank 3rd.
If I could just quickly add to what Mr. Fiorello was saying, could we get that information? It would be really beneficial to understand as he said, the MML in each of the districts to see exactly the effort that's been put into it and how it helps to actually probably look at a higher view.
We could add that to the notes.
Yeah, that would be
helpful?
great. Thank you.
MLL stands for multilingual learner, for anyone who might not know that.
So with this presentation, there are several slides. I think there are close to 80 slides, but many of them are hidden for analysis purposes. So we did do an in-depth analysis. You're receiving a portion of that, but there are many hidden slides that you have access to that provide you a plethora of additional information. It would just, we'd be here for hours, and Mike Chandler would be very, very unhappy with me. So we are just letting you know that we're going to give you a portion of the analysis this evening, what we kind of picked out and cherry-picked, but there's much more that's provided within the presentation. And if you ever wanted to, at an achievement meeting, us to go in depth in certain areas, we can certainly do that for you.
So all those slides we just skipped over, but you can look at them. So as in the past, we do a comparison to Massachusetts, only because the media, typically as soon as RICAS comes out, they like to compare Rhode Island to Massachusetts. We put a little note on here. It's very difficult for us to compare ourselves to Massachusetts because we only use the same measure in grades 3 to 8. They use MCAS, we use RICAS. Once you get to high school, Massachusetts continues to use MCAS, but Rhode Island uses PSAT and SAT. So we're going to share this information, but we just want to make sure you understand that we're comparing MCAS to RICAS. This doesn't include PSAT and SAT because Massachusetts doesn't use that as a standardized test. So we're testing grades 3 to 8. Massachusetts is 3 to 8, and I believe grade 10 because they also test 1 grade in high school. So I just wanted to let you know that. So what we've done before, and we continue to do, and that's why we have the different years, is we look at districts that border Rhode Island. And those are the same districts that we've been presenting. We haven't changed it since 2021, so just the past 3 years. And as you can see, the bold shows the districts that outperform. So in 2021, 2022, we had districts like Foxborough, North Attleboro, Seekonk, outperforming in either ELA or math. And this was the first year that Cumberland outperformed all of those districts in both ELA and math.
Okay, let's just pause on that for a second. That's amazing. That is incredible. Those are great results. And for those of you at home who may not have heard that, we are, for the first time, outperforming all the Massachusetts bordering districts to Rhode Island. That's what I want the media to pick up. Rentham is not on here. Yes. Oh, because it's a regional.
I'd have to go
Yeah,
back
so
and look.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Rentham, they're part of, Norfolk, they're all part of KP, so we're just looking at the K through 8, so yeah, that would be reflective on KP, so Plainville would be K through 8.
Well, but they all have their own elementary schools.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can look. I know there was one other one that we picked up on a few this year, and then we looked and said, oh, we didn't include them in the past, so we didn't know if we should include them this year, but we can certainly get the data for that as well. We tried to keep it to the same districts we had originally. So he was saying typically Seekonk is a school that has similar, I believe, demographics that has outperformed Cumberland. So this district also, we never did this in the past, but it does another comparison with Massachusetts. So if you look at the top right, we looked at every single district in Massachusetts that had the same percent of low-income students. So Cumberland has 18% low-income students. So those are the districts up there. Cumberland, I do have my glasses, I still can't see, but those districts listed up there. Leverett, Millis, Burlington, Pelham, Sutton, and Marshfield were the districts that also had 18% proficiency. So we're trying, to demonstrate here that, again, we're really performing as well as Massachusetts does if you look at districts that have similar demographics. Cumberland in math had 58% proficiency. Marshfield was the only other community that had the same amount of low-income students that performed at the same level. And the bottom is a little bit different. We just looked at, okay, let's look at all the districts in Massachusetts that scored 58%. And then in the bar, it shows what their demographics are, what their percent of low-income students are. So again, I think because the media compares us to Rhode Island to Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, often it looks like we're coming up short, we don't feel as though that's the case in Cumberland. Cumberland is performing just as well as similar Massachusetts districts.
Yeah, better, actually.
Just a comment.
better.
All right, Mr. Collins.
And I think part of it, I think that's reflective in the enrollment, the people who are coming. So many families, myself included years ago,
Yep.
moving from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. So when people, especially the previous slide, when we're looking at people who are just surveying the area, they can come, they see a house in, North Attleboro that's, astronomically priced, and
it's still close to
Yeah, and then they
Boston.
can come over the border to Cumberland. Well, right now it's only slightly astronomically priced, but it is, you're getting, a better education, according to the data. So it doesn't only make us competitive as a school district, but it also makes us competitive in the real estate market.
Absolutely.
Which I think benefits all of us.
Ditto, but ELA. So here's the same, I can't.
Excuse me, Mr. Fiorello has a question.
Mr. Chandler, the front door to the trans building appears to be locked.
So we did the same comparison for ELA. The top right bar graph illustrates the districts with 18% low income, the same as Cumberland. And we took a look to see what was their proficiency, with the exception of Marshfield, which performed at 58% proficiency, and Pelham, which scored 55% proficiency. We scored better than Leverett, Millis, and Sutton. The bottom left bar graph shows the districts also scoring 55 proficiency in ELA, and you can see their percent low income. So we have, with the exception of Medway and Wachusett and Wakefield, we have other districts that have a little bit more low income.
Okay, and just one more Massachusetts slide. So this shows if you compared Cumberland, and again, we're just using RICAS scores and MCAS scores. This does not take into account PSAT or SAT. Cumberland, 20% of Massachusetts districts performed better than Cumberland. 3% performed the same, and Cumberland performed better than 77% of Massachusetts districts.
Now, is that all Massachusetts district in this?
So this does not include charter schools, but other than that, it does.
So not just the bordering towns, this is across
Correct. This is
all
all
of Massachusetts?
Massachusetts districts. I don't have the number here, but there are a lot of them in Massachusetts. But we went through the whole list. How many?
This slide, okay, so on ELA, this is saying that Cumberland performed better than 70% of Massachusetts districts, and on the math, it was 80%? Wait. 77, math is 77.
So again, we wanted to highlight, even though the media compares Rhode Island as a whole to Massachusetts, Cumberland is faring well.
So this is just a little bit about subgroups. And again, we know that we need to make progress. The gray line shows, well, the top line shows economically disadvantaged, and then it shows not economically disadvantaged, and then English learners recently exited, not English learners, students with disabilities. So we know that's an area that we're always trying to improve in. However, we have made gains from last year. There was an 11% increase in economically disadvantaged students, 6% in English learners, and 8% increase for students with disabilities. We also like to point out that the recently exited English learners actually outperform the other slightly outperform the population. So once they exit, very well. It's just when they're learning language, it takes several years, obviously.
Here's the ELA subgroup comparison. We have had a 6% increase from 2021 for economically disadvantaged students. We did have a 7% decrease compared to 2021 for our students, our English learners. But just as our recently exited English learners performed better than our non-English learner students, so did students on the ELA RICAS. Let's see, I wrote this down. So 61% of our recently exited MLL students scored proficient on ELA RICAS, and 57% of our students who are not English learners performed. And then students with disabilities, we did have a nice 9% increase from 2021.
Okay, the last comparison, which we started doing several years ago, was to BVP, when BVP was outperforming Cumberland back in 2015. So the blue bars show Cumberland and the gold shows BVP. And you can see that since 2017, Cumberland has outperformed BVP. And again, we all had a decrease, as did they, post-pandemic, and they've gradually risen, but we've outperformed them, you know, pre and post-pandemic. Last year we did an analysis like this because they, in the past, have claimed that their subgroups, although we outperform them, their subgroups perform better than those in Cumberland. So we just wanted to show, again, Cumberland's blue, BVP is gold. If you look at the district as a whole, all of our subgroups outperform the subgroups at BVP.
Here's the ELA comparison to BVP. Similar story, they were outperforming us in 2015 and 2016, but in 2017 we surpassed them, and then the gap just continues to widen. This year, like I said, Cumberland students scored 55% proficiency on ELA RICAS, and BVP scored 30%. Are the subgroup comparison, with the exception of our Asian population, our subgroups outperformed students, the subgroups at BVP. You'll notice all the way on the left. However, when you total our subgroups, there's a really large gap. I did note that we tested 128 students in our Asian population, and BVP tested 32. And there was a 4% difference.
Okay, so we started presenting Tier 2 data to the committee because of the importance and the budgetary implications of the things that we were asking for support on as it pertained to supporting Tier 2 students. And so we like to provide you with a scope of the number of students who are still not proficient, or that scored, more specifically, partially proficient in math in Tier 2 across the district. And so that equates totally to about 34% of students, and we still have about 706 students that are scoring partially proficient in math. And when you look at the next slide, you want to see that bar graph trending down, which means the system is working. And so the things that you've helped us invest in, the positions that you have supported, putting in place with the Essentials programs, you can see coming off of the pandemic, we had 913 students in the district, and now we've reduced that number down to 706, which is still high, but it's exciting because it's trending down, and that's a tremendous number of students that we've recovered since the pandemic. That's a credit to the team, staff, teachers, administration. So in ELA, which remember, we're trending a little bit more slowly in ELA. It's a little bit more, it's a much different content area in terms of, you know, instruction and standards, and so it's taking us a little bit longer to recover in ELA. And so as you can see, we have about 712 students total in the district right now that are scoring partially proficient in ELA. But we are also trending down. And so, again, in 2021, we had 770 students. Last year, that number went up, unfortunately, but we were able to trend back in the appropriate direction. And so from 803, we're down to 712, which is, again, very encouraging. Any questions before we transition to SAT scores with Melissa? Good so far? Okay.
I took the computer because I couldn't see that far away. Melissa Kuznis, I'm just going to go through the SAT data with you right now. I do want to start by saying that it is really an indicator of college and career readiness. It is tied to the standards, it is standards-based, but ultimately it's supposed to be a test about college and career readiness. And so I think it is important to note that. It is very different from RICAS. So those differences I think are important to note. When you look at the SAT benchmarks, the evidence-based reading and writing, the benchmark is 480, and for math it is 530. So when I go through the presentation and you get some of the numbers, it's going to be important against that benchmark. So I might refer back to it in some of the slides. So I'm going to start with SAT in this past spring. You can see that in evidence-based reading and writing, we did have a 7.4% increase in our scores, which aligns with the state, but it is a larger leap back to where we were before the pandemic. And then in math, we took a nominal decrease, 0.7, but we're largely in that same range. And the state had a 0% increase. So when you look at the average scaled score, you're going to see that in evidence-based reading and writing, we scored 515, which was above the benchmark significantly. So when you look at the data, you're going to notice that while at times our rankings, you have to look sort of at our rankings versus our scores in this way. So 515 in evidence-based reading and writing, and then in math 495, which was below the benchmark. But the state obviously, in math globally, we're above the global average, and we're also above the global average in evidence-based reading and writing. So this is just a comparison of the mean score in terms of state, nationally, and globally. You can see that we're performing slightly above the national average. Globally, we're performing above the average, and in the state, we're performing above the average. When you look at this, this is, these are the scores for that actual testing day, so it's important to note that. This is the actual testing day that this data is based on, so it doesn't necessarily count students that took it at other times, at other dates, and other locations. This is purely the testing day data. So it was really important to sort of look at cohort growth. We really want to think about this with SAT following the cohort that we're in. So the cohort last year, we look back at the PSAT 10. And so what they do is they make projections about what you should score as a school for SAT. And we did meet all the projections. If you take a look up there, you're going to notice that it says 305 students. That's because those are the actual students that retook that. So any changes in students, changeover in new students, or students that left, et cetera, that's why the number's going to look different. So when you look at our actual score there, it's not going to match the ones I just went over, because this is based on those 305 students. So when you look at those 305 students in evidence-based reading and writing, our projected was, we should have scored between 530 and 560. We did actually score 520. And then in math, we should have scored somewhere between I can't see and I didn't switch this, 490 and 530, and we actually scored 500.
Mr. Collins?
So, Kustanis, can I ask a question? So in Massachusetts, they have, certain districts offer the SATs to everybody. It's not like the days where only the kids who wanted to go to college had to get up on Saturday morning and take the test.
Right.
Does Cumberland offer the SATs to everybody, or is it something that every kid can take? Like RICAS, every kid has to take the test, K through 8. But is this reflective of kids who are only interested in taking the test and going to college, or is it everybody?
No, this is the state test, so every kid has to.
Okay, fair
every
enough.
kid does have to take it. And I believe 95% was our rate last year. The state is actually really high in that number, so across the state, the averages were pretty high. We significantly increased in the number of students that took that assessment, but it is the state assessment and it is required. So almost all of our students are supposed to take it as the state assessment, and we had a pretty decent turnout with that in terms of the numbers. So they are reflective of that class in its entirety. So when we look at district rankings for 2023, and we often do this with RICAS, if you look at the composite score, which is the evidence-based reading and writing and the math together, with our composite score, Cumberland is currently 12th in ranking, which still keeps us in the upper third of all the high schools in Rhode Island. So that is our current ranking. When you look at numbers 9, 10, and 11, they are very, very close to us. And in the next slide, when we get there in a moment, you'll see that the average is 10.28 for the national average. So 9, 10, and 11 were still below that national average. And 1 through 8 were above the national average. So when you look on the next slide, it's just showing you where we sort of scored, that we're almost right there at that national average, but we are slightly below it. I think that's it for that. Yeah, sorry. So we can't compare to other states very easily because, as Mr. Collins said, it is very different from state to state. In a lot of states, there are students who are taking the SAT solely for the purpose of going to college or applying to some other field, et cetera. And so it's not really reflective in the same way as a state test and a state assessment. So what I did do, and again, we're looking statewide versus district, so this is our district, but it's against states. So I did look at other states that had similar percentage rates in terms of students taking the assessment and what their score was in comparison. So Connecticut, it is actually the state test. 93% of their students did take the assessment. New Hampshire, it is the state test. 82% of their students took the assessment. I put Florida up there because Florida actually is very high in ranking, but they have a 90% rate of students taking it, so I also pulled them as someone who has a close number of students taking it to us. So when you look at those totals, we are above many of them, and Connecticut is known for doing really well, so we are above that average. If you look at Connecticut's total composite score on average. And then the N just shows you the specific for evidence-based reading and writing and for mathematics. So we are, again, it's a tough comparison because you're looking at a district against a state, and there are different parameters around which these states function. So some provide credit. It's a very different depending on what state you're in and how they award credit for this or what they're requiring for students in taking this assessment. But I did want you to get a little bit of a glimpse at what that would look like against other states. So I'm going to talk similarly to Kathy and Bethany about SAT growth. So when we look from 2017, which is when the data starts on RIDE, to 2023, you can see that we're not quite where we were back in 2017. So we were at 42%, but we are recovering and we are growing. The difference between last year and this year, again, was nominal. It was at 0.7%, but we're trending up, so that is on a positive note. When you look at mathematics against other districts, thank you, you can see that we're ranked 11th in the state, and so you can see which districts are performing above us: Barrington, Charahoe, East Greenwich, Exeter, West Greenwich. But again, the numbers are very different than ours. So Exeter, West Greenwich, I believe, is significantly smaller. I have it under here, but I actually have it. I can give you that number. I think I'm going to cover it at some point anyway. But so similar to the data that Bethany and Kathy presented, the numbers for students that we're testing is very different than some of these other districts that are much smaller in size. So we have to take that into consideration when we're looking at this data. I also I'll do it with the rank. So I'll cover it here, but no, can you go back? Sorry. So if you look back, and you don't have to go back to this slide, if you think about the rankings, I do want to just talk about this for a moment because I do think this is important to discuss. We have been pretty consistent over the last 5 years. Our ranking really has not changed that significantly over the last 5 years in terms of the composite score and ranking of 12th. We've been in that range, 12 or 13 in the state. It has not changed very much over the last 5 years when it comes to math or when it comes to ELA. Evidence-based reading and writing. They've stayed largely the same in terms of ranking across the state. And this is important because, and we've stayed in the top third in the state in that ranking. This coming year, we just started the new ELA and math curricula, and it's a brand new SAT, and the SAT is significantly different starting this spring. So when they take that SAT, it is only 2 hours, the test. It also includes literary and informational and evidence-based reading and writing. They're only giving small passages, no more long passages. It's calculator for every section. So there are significant changes to the SAT. And it really is important to think about, I'm showing you the data here, but this gives sort of our history. But this year really for us is going to be a baseline. We also have regulations for secondary education, and those regulations are also significant in changes because it requires Algebra 2 and other courses that may impact this data as well. So when we think about SAT this year, we're starting a new curriculum. We have NEASC accreditation beginning. We also have a new SAT. We also have, what did I say? I don't know if I missed something. But we have a lot of new stuff happening here. So this really is sort of where we were. This year is really going to mark a new baseline for us this spring. So going forward here, we really are going to sort of see where we are against other districts with the new curricula, with the new SAT, with NEASC in place, with whatever recommendations NEASC makes, with the new regulations in place. So the class of 2028, that really is where we can start looking at that cohort data, because we test PSAT 8-9, and then we move to PSAT 10, and then we move to SAT. So with this new, with the new regs that are starting and the class that is incoming, we will be able to closely PSAT. So we also, I wanted to similar to Beth and Kathy, so look at our group. It's a little different with T and PSAT. So when you look at them, at the bottom, it says the number of MLL students testing not Cumberland meet for guidelines supporting, which is out. Is there more students enough for them to take assessment or assessment to report out? Don't. So we know that we don't have data. Data for the student ability with disabilities was available because ready better than 90% did not meet say proficient. Don't know. So we don't know many, but on general is information that 90% of students who students with ability meeting were not the efficiency assessment. When you look at be actually advanced group, 9.8% for median proficiency. This is actually a % increase 20 from 21. We did look at the data and have that to be economically disadvantaged group the loss, uh, the rate absentee of 4%. So seems it's to court some in a sense, you know, that if you're and you're not there, not in not school and working on this, and particularly in math because you know top they're covering excessive or progressive since he does impact for these schools. So that was relation that we found that out in terms of how to why we might decrease. So similarly, this is evident based reading, writing that I can see we are getting terms a lot in terms of moving back to where we were prior to the pandemic. Our this year at 4%. And hopefully ending up forward. So we ran in the 15 states. Said this is where I had to see seems and we're allowed in the state, but in math for 15th. That you can see the is different are in terms of those that are we are oops it's not I think yeah in terms of the schools that are arming us back. So again, Bristol, Granite, consider Granite, Boston, Middle, Lincoln, Town, North Town, Port Situate, Smith, and South Town. So again, we can think about the sort of the base year line of this year, we just really have to be, what on there going on, or what curriculum, what are they use in that curriculum, quality material. We had materials that we choose. There was sort of wonder, a lot of wonders that around right now, and with hopefully flowing to be fun. Those the things to happen. What happened with the SC and PSC this year. Different, so math, we actually had 15% from an increase in 2021 for year. ELs say tends that be skilled are repeated over and over and over and over again in each delay, so you can very different. It's a different area of the subject of math. The economic disadvantage group advantage 33% efficient if you and look at the bottom, it's the same exact. I didn't data, we have enough out to report on our elevation population and students in terms of disability, 90% not meet greater than 5, 90% did not ambition.
So at this point, we only quick have one ability accounting summary. He's going to need that share with one to do, but Paul that is in the event put a lot of information out there. Like I said, a ton. There are heads and slides that can go. We can go over and certainly dive into measure at the of the committee. Or any, but any questions for us regarding some of the content that you may we did wondering and cover before just the quick summary reads us about accountability. Will be your way. Will be out.
So, with redistricting policy, they want comments that we complain here is convinced that they're going to go to their children are different school. This school as good as they're from. The one slide that you have several of them on break down by the data school will that be available to the public to see the information by school? Is that something that remains private for analysis only?
The public information is actually you can public the general public access can actually get it on the website. What work historically, I think this is 9 year doing historically we've chosen to not go data school data because just because of this the in these and kind of we can go whole on a rabbit or certain want to be things and we respect of the teachers the administration and so we like to celebrate school and equally sometimes if does that narrative isn't for us so we choose to keep it very global as a district as a youth of uniting presentation, but only answer your information that information available will be available and be available. And I agree
think numbers don't or tell the stories of population schools of the schools and other surrounding that have issues affect testing outcome under as a teacher. I think but and people think about it, they can read and it's the same the number. But I do want to highlight. I was doing some math. Sorry, while you were all in your presentation and looking at the data, none of the schools score below the, I believe, top percent 40th in the state. The higher the third grade, fourth and fifth, and middle school. So people, no matter what they're thinking, we're still in the majority of the schools like they were top 20 for every elementary school and for the middles, and really I just want to recommend and I think they'll get bogged down in numbers. And so, I was just really, I was really impressed with that, and I think that people maybe need that. So there are maybe different can't is that always for the accounting paid on a piece of paper, but the teach and there's the staff and the growth that you have is so good, and again, for every school to be 40 top 20, 30% of it is wonderful. I just wanted to point that out.
A question? Any?
I have a question. College question. I don't know. Actually, if you know this, who's in this, but you know, during COVID and over school. Many schools went to SAT option. I know, which my applying daughter was at the time. That did, so that impact how seriously she has took the to say. I would she when the school is applying to install the option for SAT. That is that true? Do you see them continuing? Is there SAT having more your optional? I know just through this. You ask, Mr. Maybe she should just can answer it. Just go through it. It's gone. But curious, general, just
School, most are every school I found test optional. There is talk that and 20 ending in 25. An agreement that was kind of agreement upon settled now, but right so it is affecting definitely when kids don't need to school or kids unless you absorb very going high achieving to high achieving schools.
thank you.
That design. Okay. There we go. Mine in that I could change. So I changes all I think are towards moving more to the state test state what tests look like when we change. Think about the judges that is SAT taking actually when they actually have college board have high as high quality career curriculum materials and so I think that anticipation knowing college that is when it's that some way this respond to the change due to the change atmosphere around assessment. So, and sort this is yes, the direction that's direction in with just the change that we're through. And it would be more we have right as it's a different sure we so one component and we but it right being it isn't the actual the essence. I don't say in that for the word statement that it is all I think so that more interesting about these that it is very and this every just like digital it's going to be so even if not what it if down different in terms of trying to figure out how use that and use have certain so the more online or I think have a more clear, clearly with whatever of the that winter skill.
Just so this is a very quick very people look the kind of okay. So this is a quick school evaluate in order to schools can there's range factor all of that data spend system result ultimately rated by people. Things include look at performance that would then under the growth commitment math LA proficiency science and the science time include that. Also look yes, take account some teacher and then see that we talked about the one green and they look ready. Look great. We graduate which sees the students here in college and secondary colleges and critics. Cool. This is very I'm not by school. Perform math growth like the for three strong modern that's low that has presented data addition shows 70% of on are receiving social that support has been placed. And the deal need to improve ML coordinates and the whole and the sleep the they have the and and commitments into individual rules and things why they getting they
nothing changed. Talked about schools that had diverse that
So what the in the piece that's pieces a lot of most normally the classical perennial in school in the ML the
10 have it's just analysis, but with checking around right, give my heart.
the on is that data makes sense. Once, which means here and chance system boring of the average performance total in district. So we're scoring much
I just of abilities. Kids who